So we're going to continue talking about the Odyssey. The Odyssey, as we broke off last time, we were talking about Telemachus and how he was going to go to Pylos and to Sparta to try to get news. Well, they talk about hospitality. Menelaus talks about the hospitality that they had enjoyed on their way home from Troy and how they want to show that to others. But Nestor doesn't seem to be actually all that hospitable. After Telemachus talks about the difficulties having with the suitors, Nestor says, "Now that you mention it, dear boy, I do recall a mob of suitors. They say, besets your mother there in your own house against your will and plots your ruin." Does that sound like a lot of concern? If he's concerned, why didn't he remember what was happening? And why doesn't he now offer to do something? Menelaus also is going to say, "How shameful!" The red-haired king burst out in anger. "That's the bed of a brave man of war they'd like to crawl inside. Those spineless, craven cowards." Yet Menelaus does not offer any aid. He's hospitable. Yeah, he'll offer you a nice meal or something, but is he actually willing to help? Meanwhile, Odysseus continues to suffer. Now, Odysseus will get to leave Calypso's island. The gods are going to get together and agree. He gets to leave, but he has to leave on a raft. Why make it so difficult? The question, why is he having to suffer so much, has not really been dealt with. He ends up on the land of the Phaeacians, and the people of Phaeacia are going to plead with Odysseus to tell the story of his journey since leaving Troy, and to talk all about the journey because of the pressure and because he really is at the mercy of these people to help him. And one of the things he's going to talk about is a story of the Cyclops and what happens there, and that's what we'll talk about right now. So he and his men go to a cave on an island. His men are a little bit nervous. They're not sure this is a good idea, but Odysseus loves adventure. And they go to this cave, and they're looking around inside, and the giant who lives in the cave comes home, puts the giant boulder in front of the cave, so now none of them are able to leave because no one can move the boulder except a giant like him. And then he finds these men in there, and he decides to eat one of them. He is not a very nice giant, and he's going to continue to eat these men one after another for his meals in the coming days. Now, Odysseus has to figure out, how can I get out of this? This is part of why he's considered a mastermind. He's so clever. This is one of the reasons why Athena loves him, is because he's wise like she is. So one of the things he comes up with is, let's get this Cyclops drunk. So he's going to have to give him a lot of alcohol, and a special kind that's going to cause him to fall asleep. And while he is asleep, he gets his men together and they blind the Cyclops. They have to get together a giant spear, and it takes many men to carry it. And they take out his eye while he's asleep. And he's so deeply asleep because of the wine that they're able to do this. They escape. But when they escape, Odysseus does something that seems rather foolish. He taunts the giant. "Hey, look at me. Look at how I was able to get you." And the giant can't see anything, but he can hear Odysseus. And so he throws a giant boulder and nearly capsizes the ship, nearly hits the ship, because it's a pretty big boulder, and he can hear, and he can throw, so he's able to get kind of in the ballpark. And what Odysseus says is, "They couldn't shake my fighting spirit." And this is something important to keep in mind about Odysseus and about the ideal of the time. His fighting spirit was something that he was proud of, even though it got his men in danger. To live for adventure, for danger, for bravery in battle, bravery even in a situation like this when it seems like it's just foolishness, that was something that was prized. So his men say, "So headstrong, why? Why rile the beast again?" So they begged, but they could not bring my fighting spirit round. I called back with another burst of anger, "Cyclops, if any man on the face of the earth should ask you who blinded you, shamed you, say Odysseus." So Odysseus is riling up the beast. He wants him to be angry. He calls it his fighting spirit. So this tells us something about the ideals of these Greek people, what they lived for, what they prized. Odysseus is the hero of the story, and this is something that he prizes. The fact that he put his men in danger is not really to be considered. Now, how is this all going to end up? That's one of the central questions. Remember, we're essentially dealing here with the problem of evil, not as it's thought of in theism. If God is all good and all powerful, why is there evil? But here in a polytheistic context where there's many gods, the gods are not all powerful, but there's suffering, and there's a desire to know what's the meaning of it. And what is the meaning of the suffering? Ultimately, it's going to come down to revenge. In the end, Odysseus will get revenge on the suitors. He will make it back. He'll play it up through several books. He'll be in disguise, and most people won't know that it's him, but he plots with Telemachus, and he's able to take out all of these suitors. There's a lot of them. Something like 40, 50, 60 of these suitors, and they're all armed. He is able to get their weapons away, but still they're able to grab some things to fight with. But because he's such a skilled fighter, and because the great men really seem to be able to single-handedly take out 50, 60 people without any great difficulty, Odysseus is able to get his revenge. But does that make it all worth it? Does that somehow explain why all the suffering happened? The suffering that Odysseus went through really isn't explained. What was the meaning of it? What was the point of it? Was there any significance for all that had happened? Or is it just suffering after suffering, meaninglessness, meaninglessness, meaninglessness? They've managed to find some sort of meaning in war. They've decided that war is meaningful. But can you find suffering in all areas meaningful? Is that really possible? In the end, the story of the Odyssey does not end in a meaningful way. Just like the Iliad, you're not going to have a coherent picture. You're not going to have a meaningful story. And this is going to be something that's going to give energy to that age of reason. You have these classic books written so beautifully, so well, such wonderful storytelling, and yet lacking in meaning. And it's going to be left to the people in the age of reason to try to think that through and try to find meaning on a deeper level. And they will make an effort at that. They will rethink, critique that worldview that they're coming out of and try to go further. And we'll look at some of that in our future videos. Now we will have one more video on the Odyssey to focus in on the view of the afterlife that comes in this text. So that'll be our next video, and then we'll carry on moving into that age of reason.